Good evening. I hereby call to order the March 9th, 2015 meeting of the Mayfield Heights City Council. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. DeJohn?
Here.
Mr. Mano?
Here.
Mr. Mercurio?
Here.
Mr. Monaco?
Here.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Here.
Mr. Sharia?
Here.
Mrs. Tressi?
Here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. We will now move on to approval of the minutes of our February 23rd, 2015 meeting. I hope everyone's had the opportunity to read through the minutes. If you have any suggested changes or amendments, is there a motion to approve the minutes? Moved by Mr. Monaco, seconded by Mr. Mercurio. Changes, deletions, or any amendments to the minutes? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes of the February 23rd, 2015 meeting have been approved as written. We will now move on to correspondence and announcements. Is there any member of council who has an announcement? Seeing none, we will move on to reports of officers, and we'll start with our mayor. Mayor DeSico?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you all for being here this evening. It looks like the promise of spring is finally upon us. Let's hope it continues to warm up. I met with the Service Director, Joe Finaro, and City Engineer Greg Sifra to review the Marnell sewer flow meter data. The flow meters do show that there is an infiltration of stormwater into the sanitary lines. The next step is to determine the best way to stop the infiltration. And some more testing is required to figure this out. So our service director, the city engineer, and the County Department of Public Works are in the process of coordinating some more testing. I had the opportunity to meet with Seth Ehrman, CEO of State Industrial Products, and receive a tour of their headquarters located in Landerbrook. We are fortunate to be the home of a prestigious company such as State Industrial. It was a very impressive facility and impressive operation. Finance Director Bob Trivia and I have met with all department heads to review their budgets. A Finance Committee meeting will be held next week to allow for review of the entire city budget before it is presented to City Council. And finally, our new website will be going live, we hope, very shortly. There are a couple links that are not functioning properly right now. As soon as those get resolved, the new site will be up and running. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any questions for the mayor? Mr. Mano?
Mayor, since you announced the coming of Winking Lizard to our city, I've had several phone calls from residents anxiously awaiting that. Is there any, can you give us any more news on how that's going?
It's going slowly. They have approached the building department. No construction has started yet, so it's in the works though.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Monaco?
I didn't hear you correctly. Is the infiltration is due to sanitary going into the storm, or the storm going into the sanitary?
Storm leaking into the sanitary.
Thank you.
Mr. DeJohn?
And Mayor, will you be also investigating the Ascot Bellingham area too, as far as the flooding over in that area goes?
That's all part of all the meters that are being monitored, and that hopefully it's going to be one big fix there, but we'll have to see.
And then the other question is, as far as the street repairs go this year, have they started analyzing these streets as far as where we're going to put all of our money to?
Yeah, Joe Finaro has come up with Well, they have a standing list of streets that they evaluate every year, so they do prioritize them. This year, he just started going over them with the engineer, and I believe we're going to try to come up with a 5-year, more in-depth plan to start fixing the streets, because we have been more or less band-aiding them for a while. So we're going to see what it's going to take to do a little bit more work, prioritize the streets, and probably have a much more robust road program.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the mayor? Thank you, Mayor. We'll move on to the Director of Law, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. No report this evening.
Thank you. Welcome back. Questions for Mr. Murphy? We'll next move on to a report from our Director of Law, our Director of Finance, Mr. Tribby.
I passed out to all of you the recommended proposed budget. We will obviously discuss that in detail at the Finance Committee meeting, which is on St. Patrick's Day next Tuesday. I think the time is 6 p.m., but you'll receive an official notice.
Thank you, Mr. Tribby. Are there any questions for Mr. Tribby? Mr. DeJohn, I was watching you.
Will that be a committee of the whole meeting, that budget meeting, or?
No, it's just the Finance Committee, but obviously all members of council can attend any meeting that they would like to attend.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for Mr. Tribby? Next, we will move on to reports of committees, commissions, and boards, and we will begin with the Building Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have two things, this could be in the form of a question for clarification, but anyhow. A couple who frequents Pickles Restaurant asked me why there were two different color signs on the building up there. And I went up there and I took a look, and sure enough, the signs on Salon Pas are orange. The rest of the signs on the building are red, on the rest of the buildings. So I went back and looked at the minutes of the zoning meeting and the council meeting. And in the zoning meeting, Mr. Kramer asked that it be clarified if the color of the identification sign is still part of the variance request. Mr. Jameson believed that the applicant was confident that the sign will be substantially similar in color and is withdrawing that request. Mr. Otino and Mr. Quigley agreed, okay? Then, when we come to the table, I have here that I commented that if the applicant comes into compliance with the color, he does not need an issue with, I didn't see an issue with the sign. The only people who will see it are the people in the target driveway. Now, that was for the additional signage. Mr. Murphy mentioned the request for a different color was not pursued, so they have to use the same color red as the rest of the shopping center. That's in our minutes. So I would like some kind of clarification. I don't know what's going on there, but evidently what we said was going to happen has not happened. Also, I received this set of drawings and an approval for the new signage at Gaetano's. Our code allows for 3 colors on a sign, maximum, and they have 5. And it says right in the application that it's for 5 colors. Now further, that is one contiguous facade on Gaetano's and the future Paninis. And does that mean that the Panini signage is going to be 5 colors also, like Gaetano's is? Or where are we going with this? I mean, we have ordinance, we have a code, and evidently we're not following it. So I'd like some kind of clarification.
Mayor, do you have any comment?
Did you speak to the building director?
No, I have not, Mayor.
Okay.
And quite candidly, I really don't wish to do that because I don't have that much confidence in him.
I will say this, Mr. Mano, actually, I had dinner on Saturday night at Piccolo's, and at night, the sign is white. The salon
didn't
loft
see it in the
signs are,
evening. I saw it
are,
during the
are
day.
lit up, but they're white, which I thought was rather unusual. You know, I don't typically see them during the day, but at night, when I pulled into the shopping center and all the signs are red across all of the marquees, salon loft was white, and the little SL on the side of the building that faces Target was white. So I don't know if it changes from day to night, but you are correct, it's not red. And red is the color of the sign from the shopping center. Is that your report, Mr. Mano?
That's my report. I'll still await an answer.
Any other questions for Mr. Mano? Let's move on to Finance and Audit Committee, Mr. Mercurio.
Thank you, Madam President. I am going to set up a meeting for next Tuesday at 6 o'clock to review the proposed 2015 budget. And I also spoke with Mr. Murphy last week regarding some legislation about compensation for elected officials. And I had an initial draft that I shot back to him. I believe he's going to make some changes to that, and I'm hoping to have that by next Tuesday so I can share that at the meeting as well. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Mercurio? Next, we will move on to the Legislative Committee, Mr. Monaco.
Thank you, Madam President. Later on in the agenda, we have an ordinance number 2015-7 that pertains to high grass and weeds, and I will be able to, I'll be glad to answer any question at that time.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Monaco? We'll move on to Public Works and Services, Mr. Sharia.
Thank you. This winter, the Service Department has ordered the most salt since the winter of 2002-2003. Now, in that winter, the city ordered 7,721 tons. Well, this winter, this global warming winter, as of this past week, they filled the bin with 800 tons, putting the city at the total of 7,430 tons. Now they are estimating ordering 400 more tons by the end of the year. That should make them national champions. We've also spent $20,000 plus on repairs on trucks. That includes transmissions, springs, exhaust pipes, and so forth. And the Service Department has also replaced mailboxes and fixed water breaks as they develop. That includes streets like Woodhurst, Fruitland, and Crestwood. That concludes my report. Thank you.
It's a very depressing report, Mr. Sharia. Let's cross our fingers that we're not going to use any of this additional salt, and we're
Oh.
going to save it for next year because,
I'm looking for a championship year.
oh, I'm looking for spring. Are there any questions for Mr. Sharia?
Just one.
Mr. Mano?
Oh, this guy.
What? Okay, Vaughn, settle down. When are they going to start looking at aprons that have been damaged by the plows? I've had a few calls from people wanting to know if the city's going to be looking at that and when.
Oh, I'm sure Mr. Fenaro will be looking. I haven't received any calls.
Mayor?
Have they been reported, do you know? Did they call
Oh,
service.
they were just inquiring as to if they were gonna start looking at the aprons and, you know,
The best thing to do
list
is,
for repairs.
yeah, the best thing to do is have people call.
Right.
That way they'll,
Make a
it'll
list.
shorten the time they have to get around to the whole city to check that out.
I will convey that, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Sharia? Next, we will move on to Recreation and Parks, Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam President. We had our meeting on February 24th. We had a presentation from POD on Oakville and Mayfield Parks. It's the ideas of the redesign. The commission discussed the 2015 events and dates. We have a busy season listed. For more information, see the city website, City Focus, and of course, Parks and Recreation. The Parks and Recreation activity brochure is on its way. The Bunny Breakfast on Saturday, March 21st, has two time slots available, 8:30 a.m. and 10:15 a.m. It's a breakfast and egg hunt and a new continental coffee bar for the adults. It's $5 per person. Please call for tickets. The annual City Pancake Breakfast has tickets on sale now. They're $5 pre-sale and $6 at the door. Save the date, Sunday, April 19th from 8:30 to 12:30, where the mayor and council will be cooking. Sean Ward, Parks and Recreation Director, is here with an update on the Wildcat Sport and Fitness Center. The next meeting is Tuesday, March 31st at 7 p.m. here in council chambers. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Are there any questions for Mrs. Sabetta?
Madam President?
Mayor?
This isn't for Parks and Rec, I apologize, but before we get too far away from Mr. Mano's question, it should be clarified that aprons are fixed if they have some type of utility connection, either water or sewer in them. That's when the city repairs them.
So if the plows chop off the edges of them, the homeowners are on their own.
Is it our plow doing it? Is it their plow guy doing it? I don't know. That's a hard determination to make. I don't know if we want to just put a blanket statement out there saying we're going to fix everybody's apron. That's what I'm worried about.
I'm not making a blanket statement, I'm just saying there are places where it's very obvious that the apron was damaged by a big plow, and I don't think anybody's private contractor has a blade strong enough to do that kind of damage and drive away. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and it should be done on a one-to-one basis, but, you know, that's something that in the past.
Right.
we-
And
we always
if they
took
call,
care of.
we need to look at them. Absolutely, we'll make that
Absolutely.
determination. Yeah.
I make no promises. I mean, I'll refer them to the service department, but there probably are gonna be some that we're gonna be responsible for.
Madam President?
Mr. Monaco?
I'd like to congratulate Susan Sabetta on her donation and the nice write-up that she had in the Sun Messenger.
Thank you.
Susan, do you want to tell us more about it?
I never saw it. Everyone's telling me about it.
Oh.
But for who doesn't know, she and her husband donated $25 to the Wildcats Sports Center, and the money was to buy some,
Put a family in, I didn't know which one.
Put
Put a
a fa-
family into the fun night. Oh, that's all it was.
and the first person walking in was a reporter for the Sun Messenger.
That was,
How lucky can you
that
get?
was very convenient.
Boy, I tell you, you got pulled. You got pulled, kid.
I got telephone calls telling me. That's what I did, yes.
Well, congratulations.
Yes. Yes, I thought it was St. Francis.
Next, we will move on to Safety and Transportation Committee. Mr. DeJohn.
Thank you, Madam President. I do not have a report tonight.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. DeJohn? We'll We'll move on to Board of Zoning Appeals, Mr. Mercurio.
Thank you, Madam President. Tomorrow night's meeting has been canceled due to lack of an agenda, and that completes my report.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Mercurio? We'll next move on to the Commission on Aging, and that is my report. The commission met on Tuesday, March 3rd at 5 p.m. here in Council Chambers. Our first dance of 2015 will be held April 25th with Frank Cardone as the entertainment this year. The city did receive a grant in the amount of $4,830 from the Cuyahoga Solid Waste District to be used to defray the cost of our annual Shredding and Recycling Day, which will be held Saturday, May 2nd. And our next Commission on Aging meeting will be held April 7th at 5 p.m. here in Council Chambers. And the commission is still looking for volunteers who would like to be a part of the Commission on Aging. We have a couple vacancies and we are in desperate need of those who want to volunteer their time. Are there any questions? I was not looking at you, Mr. Sharia.
Your husband was.
Are there any questions on the Commission on Aging for me? We will next move on to the Planning Commission, Mr. DeJohn.
Thank you, Madam President. Our meeting was canceled last week, so I do not have a report.
Thank you, Mr. DeJohn. Next, we'll move on to Mayfield Union Cemetery, Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam President. The Mayfield Union Cemetery will be meeting the end of April, providing the weather stays where it is. Thank you.
You're welcome. Questions for Mrs. Sabetta? Next, we will move on to our public portion. Pursuant to Section 121.02, Section H8 of the Codified Ordinance, each person will be allowed 5 minutes to speak with a maximum of 30 minutes allotted for the entire public portion. Although it is not a time for public debate, it is your opportunity to address council with your concerns. Please know that no personal attacks or comments will be allowed. Also, if you're here in connection with an agenda item, this is your opportunity to address council. If you'd like to be heard this evening, please raise your hand, approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. It is now 7:26. Mr. Carr. Oh, excuse me.
Mr. Carr, I just would indicate to you before you get rolling that the Panini's matter is currently not on the agenda. It's on table. If council determines to remove it from table and then consider it, you'll be provided an opportunity to, whatever presentation you have at that point can be made. If you want to say something now, but just as a note that it may not be considered this evening. But you will have an opportunity if it is.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Brian Carr. My office address is 1392 Som Center Road, Mayfield Heights, Ohio. I am here to ask that the Panini's matter that is currently on the table be taken off the table and properly addressed tonight. I believe that the comments that were made and the discussion that was had, the questions raised at the last meeting have been adequately addressed. And first, I sent a letter and I copied all members of council and the mayor on it on February 24, 2015. I would ask that that may be part of the permanent record in this matter. Given the contents of that letter, I believe it's adequate time to take the motion off the table and address it. Two other things that I'll say, and then I'll be seated. I understand that your building director had a conversation with the architect for Panini's in the last week or 10 days. I'm not certain exactly when that conversation occurred. And I believe that Mr. Jameson was provided all the information that certain members of council had asked at that meeting, even though I believe I adequately addressed them. Finally, I do have the architect here tonight to answer any questions that may still be outstanding. That being said, I just want to reiterate my request that the motion be made to take this motion off the table and to vote on it. In my humble opinion, there is no reason to keep keep this motion on the table, and my clients are entitled to have their matter heard by this council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Mr. Murphy?
Just one note, you mentioned your letter of February 24, 2015, which is addressed to council and the mayor. Direct your attention to the Code of Professional Responsibility, where a lawyer is supposed to direct a letter regarding a legal matter to the attorney representing the body, not to the body itself. And I just ask you to take a look at that so that the next time you direct it to me and not to my clients.
I am well-versed counsel in that rule of professional responsibility, but this matter is not in litigation. I'm representing a client with a matter before this council. Therefore, I am well within my rights to communicate with the body that's considering the matter before this council. Again, this matter is not in litigation yet. If it gets to that point, any communication will be with you.
They're still represented by counsel, and you're still charged with addressing me, but we're not going to argue that. That's my position, and you will abide by it.
I will abide by the applicable law that rules not only the state of Ohio, but also this country, and not by your mandate or your edicts.
That's all I ask.
Is there anyone else that would like to be heard this evening? Mr. Otino?
Hi, I'm Larry Otino, 6028 Mayfield with RJMB, the Mayfield Heights Town Center. I was totally unaware that that color is not the color that was presented to this council. To tell you the God's truth, I'm colorblind, but I know it's not the orange like on Zounds or whatever it is. Jimmy just told me that it's orange. They submitted a color that was approved, and if that's not the color, I firmly suggest that this council talk to the building department, and I know Mr. Jameson will get on him. If that's not what was approved, they should change it. I'm for you 100%. You guys were nice enough to give them that sign on the side and everything else, and they should follow through what they said they were going to do.
Thank you, Mr. Otino.
Okay.
I know that I did take a picture on Saturday night when I went to dinner, and this is the sign and how it looks in the evening, which is, again, 100% different than the sign during the day. During the day, it's orange, but I've never seen it during the day. But
I can't answer to that at night, what was submitted. But I remember when we went in there, Salon Lofts presented a color to Mr. Jameson. Jameson told him it has to be that color. And I'm sure Jameson still has that rendering in his office. And I'm sure Tommy will get on them to change it and make it right.
and I believe Mr. Murphy had said it had to be the same color at our meeting that night when we approved it.
In the minutes.
It's in the minutes.
Yeah. Well, there's all different shades of red, but they have to be close. If it's
And
orange,
I think
it's
it
not
was
red.
called substantially the same, if I'm not mistaken.
Something like that.
That's what it says in the minutes.
Substantially the same.
Right.
So, yeah.
And if there's anything I can do to help with the building department to make them do it, I'll be more than glad to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Ortino.
Okay, thank you.
Very nice of you. Mr. Ward.
Just wanted to come tonight and give you an update on Wildcat Sport and Fitness. First off, there are great things happening over there. We've been open for 18 months as Wildcat Sport and Fitness, and to date membership has never been higher. The attendance numbers continue to grow. Our residents, your constituents, are taking advantage of this, and they're happy that it's open at extended hours. Before I give you a brief history of the facility, there are two need-to-know points. Number one, the original intent of this facility was for both students and for residents. And number two, Mayfield Heights residents voted on this with the idea that they'd be available as an indoor recreation center for their youth. For a long time, this was not the case. I'd like to go into some background. The Mayfield Pool and Field House has been in existence since 1989. And over time, it has evolved to the point where the community had very limited hours. There was limited exercise and fitness options. They catered to high school students and their out-of-district friends, and the facility took on the Wild West personality, as there was no rules to follow. All the above further separated the community from embracing this facility. Although it was not what it was originally intended for, that was what it evolved into. The facility was intended to be a community asset for a much larger segment of our population. The schools recognized this, and in the fall of 2011, they approached the recreation departments, and we started meeting regularly to explore this concept. We had to work out a number of issues. We had to explore how this would work. And then in March of 2012, the facility closed down for maintenance, repairs, and renovations. The facility was reopened in the fall of 2012. Still, we had limited hours, and there was limited exercise and fitness options. But there was a number of improvements that took place. The track was lowered, a new floor was put in the gym. They remade the entranceways and limited access to the field house from the school. We were managing the facility, and we were working out the kinks, and we offered limited programming. Then in 2013, we opened as Wildcat Sport and Fitness, a name you guys all know. You get it right every time you say it. We added treadmills, we added ellipticals, weight machines, and free weights, and we continue to update the infrastructure of the facility to attract new members of our community. We also increased programming. We are now open 2.5 times more per week than we were when it was the high school pool and field house. Our hours are 5:30 in the morning to 9:30 at night on Monday through Friday. Saturday, we're open from noon to 8, and Sunday from 10 to 6. If you look at that first graph,
Excuse me, Mr. Ward, let's get a motion for extending your public portion. Do I have a motion to extend public portion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Mercurio, seconded by Mr. DeJohn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
okay, so if you look at the first graph there, it correlates with the first piece of information up there, and that's just the percentage of active memberships. And you can see that 53%, a little over half, are individual memberships. 35% are family memberships, and 12% are senior memberships, 65 and over. The next graph shows residency, and that's important. It shows that Mayfield Heights has 48% of the membership. And then if you look at the age range, basically it's broken down into thirds. A third are 6 to 20 years old. 1/3 are 41 to 64. And the final third is a combination of those 20 to 40 and 65 plus. So that kind of just gives you an idea of our membership, the makeup of the members at Wildcat Sport and Fitness. If you move to the next page, you can see that as of February of this year, we have 3,080 members, the highest level to date. Significantly higher than it was the same time last year. Moving down The next graph, it shows admittance statistics for the last the 4 months of 2013 that we were open, all of 2014, and it also shows the trends for this year in green. 2014, we had 50,294 members swipe in to use the facility. That's 150 per day. Of those 50,000, you could count 48% as being Mayfield Heights residents. That's 24,000 swipes from a Mayfield Heights resident through that facility. Good numbers. You look to this year and how we're doing this year, for the first 60 days of this year, we're up 30% from last year's first 60 days. And the current average this year is 238 members per day through that facility. It's important because it demonstrates that this facility is growing in popularity. People are starting to know about it and realize the benefit. You know what it also does? It allows us to impact people that we haven't previously been able to impact. Senior citizens that want to walk, people in their 40s and 50s that want to get a workout that we were never able to, from a recreation standpoint, service. Now, if you go to the third page, it's just a list. It's a list of the top 50 members in terms of usage for the calendar year 2014. Probably know a lot of names on there. You recognize the names. The ones in blue are Mayfield Heights residents. There's a couple of you that are members here that should strive for that first number there. As you can see, a lot of these people on this list we've never been able to touch before recreationally, and now we are. That's just memberships. In addition to memberships, we also provide programs, rentals, and birthday parties to the facility. Programs are offered both through Wildcat Sport and Fitness and through the recreation departments. In Mayfield Heights, some of our popular programs, LBJ, spring training, Pat Bianchik basketball camp, and players basketball. These programs produce the recreation department $12,000 a year. Wildcat Sport and Fitness programs include swim lessons, aqua classes, various fitness classes, and pickleball, all available for our residents. Many seniors take advantage of the facility as a result of the track being lowered and treadmills and cardio equipment being added. Our pickleball program is becoming very popular with the seniors. This is as for seniors, it's an area that's been lacking, and now with Wildcat, we're able to offer a place for them to go during the day, during the sunlight. As you know, sometimes seniors, they prefer not to go out at night, and now we have an option for them to enjoy the twilight of their career, of their lives. Staffing-wise, from our office, Patty works at the front desk from 12 to 15 hours a week. She oversees the front desk staff and keeps me informed of the pulse of the facility. Additionally, Mayfield Village has staff that are also work at the front desk during the week. While she's there, she continues to work remotely on Mayfield Heights duties, recreation duties. Additionally, Patrick Schneider is our facility supervisor and oversees the fitness and gym staff for Wildcat Sport and Fitness. And Kathleen Burt is our aquatic supervisor overseeing the pool. We have 40 staff that make up the Wildcat Sport and Fitness staff. And on a 2-week pay period, that is 840 man-hours that are processed. And that does not include the 2 recreation departments staffing hours. Bill Thomas and I continue to work with the schools to continue to look for ways to improve the facility for members of our school district. And lastly, we have developed a tremendous collaboration and support with the school administration, from the superintendent to our core committee, which includes the school treasurer, the personnel director, the athletic director, and the building and grounds supervisor. So that's in a nutshell. I don't know if you have any questions, but I'll be happy to answer anything you might have.
I have a question, Mr. Ward. it looks like Highland Heights sends in the next largest number of residents. Do they contribute any staffing besides Mayfield Heights and Mayfield Village? Do they contribute either dollars or hours to help?
They do not.
They do not. Is there, I mean, have they been approached?
All the mayors were approached back when Dr. Price was still around, and it was presented to all mayors. And at that time, they chose, and I guess continue to choose, not to take part. They have a part-time recreation department, mostly summertime. That's when he puts his hours in, and that's all I can say.
Have you gone back and done this same presentation, which is, quite impressive, to see those mayors again?
We haven't. I mean, that's something we can certainly look to do. I look at it from a Mayfield Heights standpoint, and we're 40% or 2/3 of this community, and I say that that's too big of a number to just look the other way. And I understand your point, what you're getting at, but I look at it from a Mayfield Heights resident standpoint and what we can provide to our residents.
And is Patty the only staff member from our department that's there, or does Nick go out and spend time at Wildcat, or you?
I am there often, like I said, with school staff and with Bill Thomas, and we just kind of oversee and try to fine tune the operation as best we can. So we're there on and off. Nick is there mostly for Mayfield Heights programs. He did put together, he was the main cog behind the Family Fun Night. Again, that was a Mayfield Heights program. He spends a lot of time up there on Sundays with our LBJ program, and most of all the other programs that we do there, he's the main cog behind that. So, but that's as a representative of Mayfield Heights Recreation.
Thank you. Mr. Ejon.
Thank you. Mr. Ward, whether we have staff there or not, Mayfield Heights residents can still use that facility, correct?
Correct.
So what is the benefit of us having somebody there, a half a day every day of the week? What's the benefit to Mayfield Heights? Since Highland Heights, they don't put any skin into the game.
They also have no programs that they run there. We have control of that facility, and we manage it, so we call the shots. So if you go back 4 years ago or 5 years ago, when we came in and rented the facility from the schools, often we would find times where on a Friday, we'd get a call that says, you can't use the facility on a Sunday because such and such, mysteriously, there was a snowstorm and they have to come in here. So last minute, a program that has 240 kids in it, now last minute is booted. And that would happen on a regular basis 2 or 3 times a year, whether it was a practice or a game. We have control of what goes on when. Highland Heights has no programming. They have nothing that goes on in there. They use the facility once, and it's for their baseball tryouts in the spring.
So we do have first dibs on any program,
They have first,
like pickleball or any of that, is what you're saying?
Correct. We have first crack, and if something doesn't work, it's on us to massage the schedule and make it work. We have,
Do you have any idea how much in dollars it's costing the city for us to?
our city,
To send these people over there?
when Patty's there, she has the ability to do work, her Mayfield Heights duties. And I view the time that I spend as providing for our residents of the city, whether it's doing work just like would be if I'm spending time at the pool. These are residents that want to use a facility, and so I view it as costing us nothing. If you want to be frank, I don't think this is costing us anything. When Patty's there, she's doing her work there, and she's providing for the residents of our community, and likewise when I'm there, or Nick.
Thank you.
Mr. Ward, one more quick question. The number of treadmills and elliptical machines that you have now have increased, I presume, from when you first opened. And actually, I haven't gone up there, to work out or anything, but my question is, Is there a waiting period? Are they always booked at night? You know, most people go, or the majority of people go after work in the evening. Is there a wait to use the machines, or are there enough machines for the people that are there in the evening?
There is a race at 6 o'clock to get up to use the machines. We are trying to resolve that problem. Every year we will add additional machines, and we will be adding a few more treadmills and a few more cardio pieces before the fall. But I guess every day is different, but yes, they are in demand, for sure.
Madam President?
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you. I think the important thing to remember, well, just to step back for a second, when I became mayor, this was kind of up and running already, very briefly, but it was up and running. Just kind of on training wheels at that time, and Sean has done a great job of getting it moving. I think the important thing to remember is without our input there and without our Parks and Rec Department's input there, this facility would not be available for our residents to use at all. So that could be one of the, if you want to say, one of the side effects of us not participating there. No matter who is participating, what city is contributing or not contributing, I think the most important thing is our residents now have the ability to use it. And without our involvement, there wouldn't be the facility and the availability for our residents.
Madam President.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yeah, I understand that, but it's just kind of, it's just a funny feeling that none of the other cities are participating, you know, so other than Mayfield Village a little bit. It's just a funny feeling to me, so. But I do appreciate the comments. Thank you.
Mr. Monaco?
Yeah, I just want to echo the sentiment of the other colleagues here. I voiced my displeasure, I think a year or two ago, about this. You know, I don't think it's fair that Mayfield Heights and Mayfield Village are going to they take the brunt of the cost of this, while you have Highland Heights that has 38% of that, and you know they're not contributing anything at all. I think the mayor should get together and discuss this and kind of get it worked out, because it's totally unfair.
Just one point to make on this. Our recreation department depends on a facility to house our programs for 6 months out of the year. If we don't have a facility, we lose some huge programs. Our LBJ program that has close to 200 kids in it, that's a wonderful program. Spring training, players basketball, Pat Vianchik basketball game, all these programs, if we lose control of a facility, it puts the responsibility back on the city. Where are we gonna go to house these facilities? Are we gonna sit on our hands from November through March? Because that's what we're talking about.
Madam President, and as far as the costs go, it's very minimal. We have not increased staff. We have made one person full-time, who was working over 40 hours a week anyway. So cost-wise, that was the city's cost. We bear no other expenses. The equipment and upkeep is all the school district's responsibility.
Mr. Monaco?
Mr. Wood, can we get figures as to what this costs the city and other cities, so we can make a decision and know exactly what's costing the city? And I agree with you. I mean, we can't go anywhere else. I mean, this is what we have, and we have to be there, and we have to take care of it if we have to. I'm just saying that it just, I can't believe that if we talk to the mayor of Highland Heights and he would just turn his back on us. I don't see that happening.
Mr. Mano?
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's working, It's working well. You start micromanaging things and putzing with it, and then things start to fall apart. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thanks, Sean. It's a great presentation.
Thanks.
Done a great job.
Very nice.
Is there anyone else who would like to? Mr. Teresi, please state your name and address.
Jimmy Teresi, 1580 Fruitland. As a school board member, Dr. Kelly and the board are very pleased the way the Wildcat facility is working. We are also trying and looking into how we could air condition and how we could put an elevator in. So those are the things that the school is looking at. But other than that, it's a perfect situation. And I do agree with you that Highland Heights should kick in.
Thank you, Mr. Teresi. We'd like that elevator and that air conditioning, please, for our residents. Tomorrow.
ASAP.
Is there anyone else that would like to be heard? It is now 7:55, and we will close the public portion. As there are no resolutions this evening, we will move on to ordinances. Ordinance 2015-7, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ordinance number 2015-7, an ordinance amending section 917.15 of the codified ordinances of the city with regard to the removal of weeds by owners. First reading.
Is there a motion to place on first reading? Moved by Mr. Mercurio, seconded by Mr. DeJohn. Roll call to place this motion on first reading.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes?
Mr. Monaco,
Yes.
Mr. Sharia,
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi.
Yes. Discussion? No discussion? No discussion this evening. Okay, this ordinance has been placed on first reading. We will next move to motions. Mr. Murphy.
Motion to advertise for bids for asphalt.
Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, seconded by Mr. Mano. Mr. Tribby, advertising for asphalt for our spring season. Sounds exciting.
Correct. It's not exciting, it's just something we have to do. This will allow the patching that Mr. Surya mentioned before.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Monaco, did you have a question?
No.
Okay. All are in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? This motion has been carried. At this time,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Monaco.
I'd like to, I move to take from the table the motion relating to the site plan for Panini at 6289 Mayfield Road.
And do I have a second?
A second.
Mr. DeJohn. Roll call on the motion to place on the agenda.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mr. Sharia,
Yes.
Mr. Monaco,
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes?
Mrs. Tressi.
Yes. Mr. Murphy, will you read the motion, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The motion is to confirm the decision of the Planning Commission approving a preliminary final site plan for Panini's at 6289 Mayfield Road for a revised patio design, including bocce courts, contingent on the relocation of the cut-through near the bank to a safer, more viable location, placing speed bumps on the main aisle, and confirming that the front setback is at least 120 feet.
Madam President, May I ask for a vote, please?
We need a motion to approve.
I'm sorry.
Moved by Mr. Sharia, seconded by Mr. Mercurio. Discussion? Mr. DeJohn?
Thank you, Madam President. As you know, I motioned in the last council meeting for a table of the Panini's preliminary and final site plan for Bocce Courts addition. I did this so I could further study the plans and the entire situation. Taken an oath of office, and I am obligated to the residents of Mayfield Heights to examine every aspect of every issue that comes before me. I did this in this case when it was brought to my attention that the plans had the wrong scale on them and the measurements did not add up. This confused me to the exact dimensions of the entire addition. Furthermore, the plans did not have an architectural stamp or seal on them, further confusing me to their accuracy. I met with Building Commissioner Tom Jamison last week, who explained to me that the plans were not correct and they had the wrong scale on them. Mr. Jamison gave us all a new set of plans for tonight's meeting, which you should all have now. He further explained to me that the addition will have a setback of probably more than 120 foot from the center line of Mayfield Road, which is now noted on the new set of plans. Mr. Jamison also pointed out that the preliminary and final plans that we see do not need to have an architectural stamp or seal on them to be official for our means of evaluating an addition. When I asked Mr. Jamison for a new set of plans after our last council meeting and before we met last week, he again said it was not needed for our purpose. In addition, the applicant's attorney, per Mr. Jamison, said that they may not approve of this request. However, he did assure me that the final plans will have all the appropriate official documentation. I spoke with the city fire marshal, Terry Simonian, last week, who told me that based on these preliminary plans, that he saw that there might be some safety issue concerns on that southeast side of the building. There was a letter sent by the Assistant Fire Chief, Mike Braccia, to the building department regarding these concerns. Once the Assistant Fire Chief and the Fire Inspector both see the final preliminary plans, they will make a determination as to what needs to be done. However, both of them said their best guess at this time, based on the plans that they saw, were that 2 parking spaces will probably need to be eliminated for safety issues. This was also communicated to Councilman Mano, who also had these discussions with both the Fire Chief and the Fire Inspector. I was assured by the Fire Marshal that all safety issues would be addressed on the southeast side of the building once he approves the official architectural plans. I asked both Mr. Jamison and Fire Inspector Terry Simonian why we do not get to see the final approved architectural plans before the Planning Commission and Council makes a decision. They said that if the project is not approved, then it would cause the applicant to spend unnecessary money on building plans. When the council approved the initial project over a year ago, in February 2014, we all saw plans that had a scale, measurements, and an architectural seal or stamp, what you call it, on them. I have those plans in my possession tonight if anyone would like to see them. These current plans do not have a seal or stamp on them, and they're dated March 4th, 2014. I still do not understand how we as a council can be asked to evaluate a building project based on conceptual plans that do not have architectural stamps or seals on them. I will definitely research this policy and consult with other experts about this fact and report back to this council in the near future. All my questions now have been somewhat satisfactorily addressed, and that is why I confirm the motion to bring this back to the table. If this addition is approved, I believe the next phase in the process will be a final review by the Building Department, Fire Department, Architectural Board of Review, and City Engineer of the official stamped and sealed architectural building plans. Those plans should have the stamps on them and seals. At that time, I was assured by Mr. Jameson and our city fire inspector that all aspects of this building construction will strictly be analyzed by them for compliance to state and city and safety code requirements. I want to work with all businesses in the city of Mayfield Heights, including Panini's. Business like Panini's can make our city a vibrant place to live and a destination place for people outside of the city. I believe the addition of bocce courts is a great idea, and I commend Mr. DiTomaso for thinking outside the box to increase revenue for his business. However, the biggest problem I have with the addition of bocce courts is that it is in the wrong zoning district. This is approved tonight. I believe future zoning applications in the city will be compromised, thus resulting in undesirable zoning issues in our U4 business district, which will result in court battles, thus costing the city unnecessary money. In addition, and in my honest opinion, the term accessory use that is trying to be used as an argument in this case does not include outdoor recreation. I've researched the accessory use argument, and it's a very ambiguous term. Accessory use to a business defined is usually customary and incidental to a business. Bocce courts are not inherently customary and incidental to a restaurant. Obviously, accessory use needs to be strictly defined in our codified ordinance, and I will also start working on that immediately. Even if Panini's can win the accessory use argument, one fact still remains. Outdoor recreation is not, and I repeat, is not permitted in a U4 business district. Very important decision is going to be made here tonight, and I believe it's a choice between upholding our codified ordinances or disregarding them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeJohn. Mr. Mano.
Madam Chairman, I too voted against this, and I echo Mr. DeJohn's comments. I did indeed speak with the fire chief, and he did have reservations about that situation on the southeast side of that building. But in my opinion, this entire thing is not about bocce courts, it's not about Panini's, it's about our codified ordinance. When the zoning board of appeals turned them down and told them they were in the wrong zoning classification, that issue should have died right there. But through massaging and cajoling and figuring ways around things, they got it to the planning commission where they knew they could do whatever they had to do. So the fact of the matter is, like he said, every one of us sitting at this table took an oath. We took an oath to uphold the ordinances of this city. A former mayor once told me, if you don't like an ordinance, then you work to change it. But until you change it, you must uphold what's on the books. And that's what should be done here. This is a gross mistake to ignore our codified and to allow this thing to happen, and there will be ramifications if it does pass. Thank you.
I have one comment I'd like to make. I agree with both of my colleagues here about the issues. I will say this, I hold BZA in the highest esteem. Fred Kramer, Jerry Rothenberg, Sam Ortega know that ordinance book inside out, backwards and forward. When they tell you that it is denied and unanimously denied by BZA because there was no hardship, they were in the wrong district, you have to take that under consideration. Fred Kramer and Jerry Rothenberg, again, Mr. Ortega, they know their job and they uphold the ordinances. So I agree with both of my colleagues. I have a comment though that I want to make. I know you know, just like everyone else. I know Mr. DiTomaso. Our children actually went to elementary school together. So, and we lived in the same development years ago. So I do know him. He's a very nice man. But by allowing this to pass when it's not in the right district, you open Pandora's box for our next friend who comes forward and wants something else. We could have the bar down the street. If they chose to buy the empty building next to them, they could put sand volleyball. And do we want that on Mayfield Road? I would highly doubt it, but who knows how council would vote on that. And my last comment that I'm going to make is that all of us sit up here on this dais, and I don't believe that any applicant should be intimidating any one of us. My husband received 2 phone calls on February 4th and February 10th from Mr. DiTomaso to try and change my vote or persuade me to vote his way. Unfortunately, Mr. DiTomaso doesn't realize that nowadays women are in business, they're in high-profile jobs, and they make up their own mind. So I don't know that that was the right thing to do. And also, Mr. DiTomaso called an employer of one of our council members, which I think is really upsetting, that you would go to someone's employer and ask them to have a council person change their vote. That's, to me, despicable. I'm sorry. Has nothing to do with this. If it's according to the ordinance, then we'd be voting for it. But those are my comments, and it's a shame that that's the way it had to turn out. Very disappointing. Anyone else have any comments?
Yes, Madam President. Listening to the comments that were just made, it's very disheartening to hear these comments imply that anyone who disagrees with those, with your assessment, is somehow not doing their duty. Everyone has their own opinion. Everyone is looking at the ordinances and interpreting them how they see fit. So somehow implying that we're not doing our job because there's a disagreement, I think, is completely wrong. And then to say that somehow that the Planning Commission's not doing their job and they're somehow massaging and cajoling this whole issue is insulting. Thank you.
Mr. Mano.
Mayor, with all due respect, the reason that we are here, the reason that we are elected to office is to guide this city through the codes, which are the laws that this city adheres to. This isn't about bocce ball, and it's not about paninis. This is about our code. The code clearly states that they are in the wrong district, the wrong zoning district. And like I said before, it should have died when the BZA unanimously told them, no, you're in the wrong district. It's other forces that have made this into a personal problem and a problem with friendships and personalities and everything else. I stand by what I said. Our job here is to uphold the ordinances of this city. Thank you.
Mayor.
No, I'm not good.
Madam President.
Madam President, may I ask for a vote, please?
Mr. Murphy?
Mr. Carr, would you approach the microphone?
I believe I called for a vote.
I understand.
Under Robert's rules, all discussion must end and the vote must be taken. That's what happened at the last council meeting. I tried to get up and have some discussion when a call for the vote was made by Councilman Mano. I wasn't able to.
Actually, it was a motion to table, and there is no discussion. What I wanted to ask you was, have you had an opportunity to present all of your evidence on behalf of your client on this matter to the Planning Commission and to council?
I think so.
Okay. That's all.
Mr. Carr, I'd like to ask your architect one question.
There's been
Oh,
a
I'm
call-
sorry.
there's been a
I
call for the vote.
apologize. You're correct. I apologize. Lisa?
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
No.
Mr. Sharia?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
No.
Mrs. Tressi?
No.
4-3 vote.
It's confirmed. This motion has been carried. We will now move on to new business or comments from council. Does anyone have Mr. DeJohn?
Thank you, Madam President. I want to close tonight by assuring all the residents that I will uphold all the codified ordinance in the city of Mayfair Heights, whether or not it makes me look bad politically. In simple terms, I will not vote for things just to make myself look good because I'm receiving outside political pressure. Will always vote according to the codified ordinance and in the best interests of the residents of Mayfield Heights. I believe that I voted right tonight in trying to deny these bocce courts in our U4 business district because that type of recreation is not permitted. And I just pray now that it doesn't open up Pandora's box. Thank you.
Mr. Monaco?
In conclusion, what I like to say is that I've been a building commissioner for the past 14, 15 years in several communities. And if a matter like this would have come before me and I would have looked at the codified ordinance that we have in place, this matter shouldn't even been before planning and ultimately to council. It is not our job to make sure that the setback of a building is correct. It is not our job to make sure that there is adequate parking, or that is a function of the building commissioner to establish whatever it needs to be done, and it needs to be sent to the right boards. If they required a variance, they should have went to the Board of Zoning Appeals. If they needed to go to the Planning Commission, they did that. They went through the proper channels. But again, in my opinion, those people should have never went to planning and ultimately to council.
Madam President?
Mr. DeJohn?
Mr. Monaco, I have a question for you. You're known out in the building commissioner area as being very, very strict, a nitpicker on everything. So I just need to know why you've taken a liberal view on this issue and voted for it.
It's not liberal view. If you look at the zoning that they're in, it's very clear to me that incidental use and a bocce court would be considered an incidental use. It's not the main use. The main use is still going to be a restaurant. It's not going to change the zoning. They're just having, it's just like they could have a bowling balls there, they can have a bowling alley, they can have, you know, anything that has to do with the restaurant and the bar that they have. Typical swimming pool. You have a either a hilltop hotel, motel, or whatever, and all of a sudden you decided to have an indoor swimming pool, or you're going to have an outdoor swimming pool. Now you're telling me that I'm not allowed to have an outdoor swimming pool in a hotel? It's an incidental to the use that they have, so it's perfectly permitted. So I mean, we agree to disagree on this, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, well, that's probably permitted in that business district where the hotel and a pool are one in one.
But that's
It's
still
inherently,
incidental to the use.
it's inherently customary to that hotel business.
Correct.
Bocce courts are not inherently customary to a restaurant.
Mr. Mano?
To my colleague, Mr. Monaco. It's been quoted that there's restaurants with pool tables, there's restaurants with dartboards, there's restaurants with games, computer games, there's all that type of thing. In those restaurants, any patron of that restaurant can get up from their table and go and play one of those sports if they so felt like it. In this situation, those bocce courts are only for leagues. The patrons of that restaurant cannot arbitrarily get up and go over there and start playing in a bocce game. There's a distinct difference.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved
Second.
by Mr. Mano, seconded by
Second.
Mr. DeJohn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion has been approved and we are adjourned.